Hi, Michael. It's Margie from Basmati. How are you?
Doing great, thank you. Great to connect with you, Margie.
I know. It's so exciting. I just really, really love what you're doing. So
Thank you.
it's perfect, and I can't believe that you are like not only living it, but get to share that with so many young people and what that gift is for them. So can you tell me a little bit about yourself and how you got started in this?
Sure. I grew up in Connecticut, and I had the great fortune of being outside all the time. Mother Nature was truly besides my actual Mother Nature was truly my best teacher. And I had the free reins of my mom to go where I chose and take my bike or my dog into the forest and the islands nearby. And this is just how I grew up, and I grew up really appreciating that stillness and that silence that many of our children now are not receiving. And I know that it truly shaped my character, and it brought a deeper sense of peace into myself, and also a motivation to help, to serve, and to help keep not only this planet, in a natural, harmonious biosphere, if you would call it. And it was these experiences were deeply ingrained in me. I chose the path of a teacher when I went to college. I loved working with children and being with kids. And didn't really, coming out of high school at 17, and I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. So I thought teaching was quite a safe bet. When I graduated college, I was 21. I moved to LA, and I had an excellent job teaching middle school math and science. And I was your, I guess it was like your typical public school in the heart of LA, and I really watched my students suffer. I watched them suffer because they were trapped in a box all day. And I tried my best. I would have a great time with them. We would do yoga and meditation every day in math class, and we had a lot of laughs together and lots of parties, and I took them on as many field trips as I could to the Rose Garden or the Science Center. But beyond that, I saw the lack of connection. Perhaps it was the lack of understanding what is our greater purpose. You're raised in the concrete jungle your whole life, and these were inner city kids, right? So I had minority kids, and they, maybe they didn't really see the purpose beyond what the gangs were offering, or what a typical 9-to-5 job would offer you. So anyways, at the end of my 2 years teaching, I received a nice friendly pink slip in my mailbox from LAUSD, along with 2,000 other teachers, stating that they didn't have enough money to pay us and we could no longer work for them. So after going through a big process with my principal freaking out because she was losing her 5 best teachers, I decided that I was going to take some time off. And I had been on the grind my whole life, the American grind. And I left. I went down I got invited to go babysit in the Caribbean islands, and I went for it. And I ended up lived on St. John, which is a nice protected island, 8 miles by 2 miles in the Caribbean Ocean. Virgin Island. It's 87% or more, I'm not really sure the exact number, national park. And so I spent my time hiking, teaching yoga, snorkeling, being with the elements, petting sharks, playing with the octopus, all the things that I had dreamed of doing for a long time. And I saw that there was a different way. There was a different way, a different possibility of living life. I didn't need to be in the grind. I didn't need to be in the box. in the cubicle and performed bringing, creating drones or children that were fit completely to the system. And it inspired me, me. I started reading a lot of alternative education, leaders of our time, and even older people like John Dewey, who was really into experiential education and very much inspired me to create a program that brought kids back into their true essence and back into their rhythm of themselves, and to connect this not only to the academic level, but to connect it to the real life, making it relevant and making the child motivated intrinsically to learn and to succeed and to help and to share, be a good human. And I left the Caribbean, and I went on my journey, and I traveled through India and different I would like to call them ancient countries, learning lots of things like yoga and martial arts. And in between these times, I would go up to Alaska, where I had fallen in love with when I was 21. I had the opportunity to go up there and work for a few weeks. And I decided to go back there, and I ended up getting hooked up with a job where I took kids out in the woods, basically teenagers out in the woods, and I would teach them to build trails. And it was through the AmeriCorps. And it was a fantastic position for 6 months, where I lived in nature and really got to connect with the kids, nature, and bring it all together. And Alaska kept calling me through my travels and through different things that I was doing. I ended up back there again to lead wilderness therapy expeditions. So I worked for a company called Alaska Crossings, and we would go out for 49 days with the kids at a time in complete wilderness. There'd be 3 guides and 9 children, or 9, teenagers. Yeah. And we'd be completely isolated for 49 days, paddling through canoeing through the islands of Alaska, coming across big grizzly bears and all this stuff. And I watched this program. This was for children that are teenagers that some of them had the option, do you go to jail or do you come to this program? Some had the option. Some were sent there by their parents, but typically it was a child, an Alaskan resident, who didn't have access to other therapy, and so they were sent with us. So according to some, it was considered sort of like the most, to refrain from using stronger words, it's really the most intense wilderness experience that's on this planet right now. Yeah. Because you're bringing kids out for 49 days in Alaska, and I loved it. Man, I loved it so much. I could have continued to do it, but there was something missing, and the missing link that I saw really was that there was a lack of healthy food. So we were bringing these ADD kids, or these kids from northern Alaska, and we were feeding them, white sugar and white bread and white cheese, which, if anyone knows Paul Chek, those are right there. Yeah. Three, those are 3 of the white devils right there. I mean, they're and we're pumping our kids, our teenagers that we were working with, full of this, and it was not helping. They were trying to detox, which they were doing very, very well from their iPads and the internet and their iPhones. They were with us in nature, but their bodies were constipated. And that's the reality. A lot of these kids had never even seen a tree before because they had lived so far up north, let alone eat a piece of cheese.
So there's like a little bit of, like dualistic thing going on internally, right? Because they're connecting to all this beautiful space and great energy of the teachers around them, but their body is being like logged down, So,
totally, absolutely. Yeah. Which is just, it's just not allowing it to really flow for them. Yeah. That natural flow, and then ultimately, the other missing link, in my opinion, was the spiritual link, the link to spirit and spirituality. And the one piece of constructive criticism that I received from from my bosses, I guess, or the people that trained me, was that I was too spiritual. And they had a hard time with the idea of me teaching meditation or pranayama, or God forbid I did a mudra in the shape of a heart, because of course every boy is going to laugh at you if you make a heart. Well, I listened to their advice, but I didn't really practice their advice. Yeah. And when I went out in the woods, I taught the boys the heart mudra, and I breathed with them. And I kid you not, that in my experience, those were the moments the kids remembered the most, and those were the moments that they loved, and those were the tools that they brought home with me. And they still connect with me now and say, "Man, Mike, thank you for teaching me that, that addiction meditation." Because still, when I feel like I want to go smoke a joint, I sit down and I do that meditation, and man, I don't feel like I need to smoke a joint anymore. So I ended up leaving the program, because I still felt like I had the opportunity to really create something unique and dynamic and holistic, if you could say. And I left and I pondered it for a while, and somehow in the mix of this, I fell in love in Mexico and working at a yoga festival, Satnam Fest. And I ended up on this journey, a different journey than I maybe had thought in the moment. And that involvement with my relationship, and also with the relationship I have to Satnam Fest, the Kundalini Yoga Festival, I ended up, they asked me if I could volunteer to help with the search and rescue out in Lesvos, Greece, where the Syrian refugees were coming across from Turkey, and about 30 a day of people were dying from drowning at that time. And I had, an experienced outdoors man. I was a wilderness first responder certified, and I've been lifeguard for 6 years. And so I said, yes, get me there.
Yes.
And my partner and I, we went to Lesvos, Greece for 3 months, and I ended up on a search and rescue boat with a few other guys, international team we had, and we were out every single night on the water, saving lives and preventing crashes, and we really watched this incredible volunteer effort come together to prevent casualties on the water. Now, when I got back from Greece, I ended up at my boss Kaden's house, and she runs Satnam Fest and also Satnam Spirit Voyage and Satnam Foundation, which is a nonprofit organization, which was sponsoring us to be out in Greece. And Kaden said to me, what are we going to do now? Like, where are you going to go? Are you going to go to India? Are you going to go to Nepal and help out with our Eco Village project, or help out with the orphanages in India? What do you want to do? And I looked at it and I said, Kaden, I'm so tired. I need to just chill for a bit. Like, we did 3 months. I just did 3 months of search and rescue. It was very heavy. I said, why don't we do a program right here in the U.S.? Why don't we do a program that serves the children, and not necessarily a disaster-based thing. Let's bring kids out in the woods, and let's reconnect them with themselves, and let's connect them with nature, and let's teach them and bring them the technology of Kundalini Yoga. And
they're craving it. They are. So they're craving it. I would assume that when you're working with them, you can just see them not only digesting all of the lessons, but literally, or I work with young people, and when they're in that space, it's like there's this wanting and eagerness to know and to integrate, even if it's challenging.
Oh yeah, I used to make my boys, especially the boys. I tend to go a little harder on the boys. I know what it's like to be a teenage boy. But I used to get them in a glacial river, for 11 minutes, up to their chin. And some of these guys, come on, strip down to your underwear and get in this cold river with me. And they're looking at me like, dude, you're nuts. No way. But after 11 minutes of walking them through breathing techniques and lowering their heart rate, would always, every time, get out of that water screaming with enthusiasm about how much they love life and how strong they are. And then I'd have them put their hands above their head and do some serious pranayama until they were high. literally vibrating with prana and vibrating with the spirit of God. And they would look at me and say, Mike, they would say, bring us to the moon again, man. When can we go back to the moon? So it definitely became a thing. I mean, where I had kids, my LA kids asking me, Mr. D, Mr. D, can we meditate right now? Yeah, we can. Of course we can meditate, So I do think it's, I think maybe at first kids are a little wary about it, especially if they've never been introduced to it. But the reality is that, we're so busy all the time. I mean, they're so busy, whether it's driving somewhere, going to class, hearing the bell, going back on their iPhone, texting this person. I mean, it's nonstop. They barely have time to eat. So you sit a kid down and you say, hey, we're going to breathe for like 7 minutes, and they're like, what do you mean? We're just going to breathe, we're going to try this mudra and see how it feels. At least my experience is I've seen the immediate change, the immediate relief that comes over their face when I let them know, man, I'm not going to have you do anything. In fact, I'd rather you do nothing. Let go and let it happen, let it be. They've done a lot of research that when you take a kid, if you were to take a kid out of a public school and put them in like a Montessori school or something where they choose what they do, almost every kid will arrive to school and sleep. And they'll sleep for weeks because they're so deprived. They don't have that nourishing moment to catch up. And so when we bring them these tools of meditation and rejuvenation through breath work or through movement, I truly do feel that they appreciate it,
and then the connection with earth and their inner strength is built, or how I envision it, I would say, is their inner strength is built with this confidence that they're not necessarily getting outside of that. I've dove into glacier or wherever, and you're in this cold water. You don't think you can do it, but when you can. Then if someone's bullying at school, there's this reconnection of this strength where you don't even have to participate, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
When I'm walking through the city, for example, any city, doesn't matter what city, I'm walking through a city and man, my problems feel so big. Mm-hmm. I'm like this isolated being. My problems feel so big. But when I climb that top of the mountain and I'm struggling to climb that top of the mountain and I'm huffing and puffing and I get to the top of the mountain and I see the expansion and I look down at the city or I look across at nature and I realize, wow, my problem's not that big. Yeah. It's not that big of a deal. And this is what teenagers or any children, anyone experiences when they're out in nature for a long enough period of time. It's impossible to continue to worry about your material life. I mean, it just does not matter. I mean, especially, when you're on a wilderness expedition and you are put in positions where you're literally, you're maybe to a kid, you're in like a life and death situation, which is possible, or you're in if I don't do this, I'm not going to be comfortable tonight. I'm going to be wet because it's raining out all the time. When you're put in those kind of situations, you move into the now, and what all those great gurus are talking about, you're experiencing the power of now, you're experiencing that. And, the healthy diet and the Kundalini yoga that I'm offering with Wild Awakening, this wilderness program is only meant to accelerate and to foster and to support that realization that we are all connected, that we all are, living in a symbiotic relationship with nature and with each other. And if we don't work as a team, things are going to fall apart. I mean, we have the choice, and every day we have the choice. Do we want to work together or do we want to fight? you know, and in the wilderness, it never works good. You know, it never feels good when you're not working together, because either you're carrying a heavier load, or you're not eating hot food, or, you know, you're sleeping on a bumpy ground. So I mean, as harsh as it can be, you know, nature is that to the point teacher. You know, we've all seen probably movies where like the Spartans or these ancient cultures, you know, used to send their boys out in the forest when they're 12, 13 years old, maybe younger, to go kill the wolf. Yeah. You know, and they say don't come back until you've killed the wolf, or you've killed the deer, or whatever it is, or whatever the rite of passage was. And sometimes these kids were out there for 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 days, and when they came back, you know, they were considered a man. They were considered that they, you know, they've looked inside themselves, and they found that true strength. And when you can do that kind of thing, you can conquer anything. There is no mountain too high to climb. There is no test, you know, in school that you can't put your effort in, that you can't overcome. And, you know, this is why I've created Wild Awakening. It's, you know, it's to give, one of the reasons is to give also teenagers the opportunity to go through a rite of passage, to experience, you know, that self-reflection, holding it up to the mirror and becoming gritty, going through the grit. You know, if you never go through the grit, how are you gonna, you know, become the butterfly and fly?
Yeah, there's an expansion that happens when you do that, right? Because there's a breaking down of these walls and barriers that allows us not only to reconnect with who we are and find that true, what I would call like a heart warrior strength, right? But also that deep connection of really one of the reasons why we're here, right, is to find that. And then our connection with Earth and her being an amazing teacher in beautiful and challenging ways, right? But isn't that how we grow and expand, right? So
of course.
I've had tears in my eyes listening to you for the beauty of what you're sharing. And I will share just a little bit. Yesterday I was talking to someone and I was helping her with some physical stuff, and her daughter is a sophomore in high school, and she told me that they have tech breaks now in classes to where the kids can get on their phone. And I know, and I was like, what does that even mean? And I thought, but what about like the ability to interact, and they're already so focused on that. And she said that they don't do that anymore. And I said, oh my goodness. I was floored by that, because I had not heard that yet, right? And so I thought, well, can't you go outside and play? Like, when did we lose that, right? And so this is like really touching to me, just based on what this mom is experiencing with her daughter, right? And
you know,
go ahead.
You know, it's interesting when you talk about this. The reality is it is all of our, you know, in Mexico they say like it's mi culpa, like it's my fault, you know, we're all in this thing together, and you know, maybe we had this vision of what technology could bring us, but it's very obvious now to see that certain aspects of it are really creating isolation. But it does begin at home. I mean, that's, you know, to set the example and the model for our children, and what you choose to give them or to expose them to is really where it begins. You know, and again, this kind of plays hand in hand with the programs that I will be running in my lifetime. You know, there's this guy, Robert Bly, which I'm sure you know is a great poet, and he writes a lot about this old grim fairy tale called Iron John. And basically in Iron John, I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but it's about a boy's story of, you know, basically self-initiation or rite of passage. And in it, it says that the boy needs to steal in order to unlock that masculine energy in him. He needs to go into his mother's room, and he needs to go under the pillow of her bed and steal the key. and that's the only key that's going to unlock the dungeon to let out this Iron John. And the point is that, or the moral of the story really is that, or that particular part is that, really as parents we have to learn to let go a little bit. We have to learn to have faith as well. And I'm not talking about letting go, letting your kid, your teenager, be out until 2 a.m. every morning. It's a different story. But what I feel it means is not creating such a sterile environment, such an overprotected environment that the kid doesn't have the space to fall down and skin his knees.
Yes. Or get dirty, right? Like I'm outside playing with some kids last week, 3 and 5 years old, and we, did a little dirt garden, and we're in the mud. They take their clothes off and covered in mud everywhere, right? And playing, and I'm like, okay, we're gonna hose off before we go in, and it's like that they want to do that, right? They want to climb the tree and get hurt. They want to not necessarily get hurt, but they're willing to try if we allow that and create the space for them. And even if you're not the parent, but you're some influence in their life, we can share just little tidbits that touch them to give them a reminder of where we come from, right? And so I feel like, yes, it's the parent's responsibility, but it's also ours as a community to get together and share that space in any way we can with them and with each other, right?
Totally. And that's what, when I'm talking about this, creating this sterile environment, it does reach farther than just the house, but to the entire community.
Yeah.
And the reality is, at the end of this Robert Bly story, or the Iron John story, is that you come to realize that this is something that the most successful cultures in all of human history that we know of have done with their kids is put them through some rite of passage, and we just don't have that anymore.
Yeah.
At least in the Western world, we do not have that, and it's very rare for, some on individual cases go through it. Myself, I went through my own rite of passage. I put myself through it, and I know that I did. But I became a man after I did that, and I know a lot of my buddies who are 30 years old, and they're still boys.
Yeah.
And so this is another opportunity with Wild Awakening and with programs like this, is to let go of your child for 21 days or however long the program is, and to trust that they'll be okay in the bosom of Mother Earth, with a guide or many guides.
Yeah.
And let them fall a bit. Let them rise up like the phoenix. Let them go a boy and come back a man. That kind of thing.
Well, and they grow. Like, that's the part about it. When we look at, and I think anyone listening, when we look back at our own lives, some of our greatest lessons were when we had to pick ourselves up, right? And so we have to remember that, either if you're a parent, teacher, anyone, that when we create that space for them to just be, there's so much growth in that. And, like, you're out in 21 days, there's a lot of growth that happens in that, and you and I discussed a little bit. I mean, I had horses, animals, like my whole life. Before I went to school, I had the responsibility, if I wanted them, of taking care of them. And I'm a kid, right? And so there was like this, okay, I get up at 4, I have to take care of my horses, take care of the pigs, I have to, like, my dogs.
Wow.
And now I have to get ready for school. And sure, maybe at that time that felt challenging, but it helped me as a person grow tremendously. Or my parents taking us out on horseback, camping in the wilderness, and I didn't think anything of it at that time, to be real honest with you, except that I really loved it. But looking back, if I took kids now, they'd probably think, oh goodness, what are we doing, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
totally.
we take them, and whatever, camping, hiking back. I took a 3-year-old. I was at Glacier National Park, and my brother lives there. Yeah, beautiful. The space is really incredible. And we took 4 kids, the youngest being 3, and walked in 3.5 miles. Now, she walked the whole way, And
Fantastic.
and we were back through the water and doing a whole bunch of stuff, and we all walked back, and that she did about the last probably quarter mile have to, and they all did fabulous. We're doing, there were thumbleberries there and all these things that we were collecting, and it was great, and we were eating as we were walking and from nature, right? And
of course.
She went the entire way, except about the last quarter mile. She was tired, and I thought, that was a strength in her that no one even had to teach her. It was there. She wanted to be there and be present and do that. And yeah, there were a couple moments she fell, and I used her because she was the youngest, right? But there was a strength, and I think she had like a couple scrapes and nicks, and I'm just really, really honored and grateful that you are doing this. And
thank you. Yeah.
So anyway.
When I hear you say, that she wanted to be there, and there was kind of this inner strength that no one had ever taught her before.
Yeah.
I think that's very valid with all children, and all of us really, is that if we are motivated to do something intrinsically, comes from the heart kind of things, we'll do it, and we'll do it with a smile on our face, and we'll find that fountain of youth, that fountain of eternal energy, that's connected to us and to the earth, and we'll go through anything.
Yeah.
And so, this a program like, when we're in school, or at least my experience in school and teaching school, it's not always necessarily the most motivating place to be. And so I think that's why you see a lot of kids putting their heads on the table and falling asleep. Yeah. It's because they're not connected to that source of energy. Whereas take them out, you take them out into a wilderness setting, and I mean, I've never really seen a kid that's genuinely bored, especially when you're giving them activities like, hey, let's make a fire out of, 2 pieces of wood, or let's carve this stick into a totem using these knives, and I'll teach you how to use them well. Or let's go gather some water from that spring over there and see how it tastes. Or pick berries, like you said. Come on.
Yeah.
Which, you have most kids. I've seen kids carrying big backpacks that are running through the forest in joy because there might be some blueberries around the next corner.
Or that fresh water out of the glacier, right? So we're taking and literally it's so beautiful. I also think that when we, and I'll try to frame this correctly, but when we, I don't know if the word is expectation, I don't really want to use that, but when we allow them to find that strength, and I want to say like maybe teach to the like highest common denominator instead of the lowest, right? They will rise to that occasion. So if you're out in the wilderness and teaching and things that they're totally foreign to them, they really want to strive to do it and to know and to thrive in that. And
of course,
instead of saying, oh, you don't have to do that because of this. And it's like they want someone to respect and know that they can do that, even if it's challenging.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so there's so many lessons in what you're doing, and not only about actually teaching us to be indigenous to the earth, right? Because I know in Western culture, I don't know that we feel indigenous to the area, right? And,
sure.
And we are. And so there's a responsibility in that comes with not only taking care of it, but taking care of ourselves in that. And so there's a lot of lessons in this, not just confidence in that you can do it, or from what I see. Like I told you, I want to be a 14-year-old boy and go, that's how great would that be, right?
Yeah, of course.
So I just am really honored. What else would you like to share, not only about the program, but maybe about Satnam and the people you work with, so people get a deeper understanding of everything available that is encompassing this?
Yeah, so Satnam Foundation is a foundation that was started just a handful of years ago, and the idea was to enable yogis to serve, enable people to serve each other. And, for the past 5 years, we've been really helping a few different projects. I mean, we've helped out with an orphanage out in Rishikesh, India, and we raised a bunch of money and helped them build a dormitory for the kids at an orphanage. And we sent a group of people over there on a retreat to actually get their hands active with the children. We've helped out with different hurricanes and disaster relief where people needed money, and we would come out with a Kirtanade album, which was a brilliant idea. And basically it's a compilation of donated tracks from amazing musicians like Krishna Das and Sanatam Kaur and David Permal and all these amazing artists that donate a track. We sell the album, and then we use that money directly to fund certain projects. So if you go on the website, satnamfoundation.org, you can see kind of all the projects we've done successfully. And one of them was the search and rescue project in Greece that I talked about. Yeah. We're connected. We're connected a lot through Satnam Fest and Spirit Voyage, and we're at the different events, the different Kundalini Yoga events representing us. And we did a little project with Standing Rock, and we now have actually a sustainable food project we're doing. It's called the Lakota Food Project that Tina Malia is sort of creating, and the idea is to go to the Pine Ridge Reservation and other reservations where Native Americans are living, and creating health food stores for them in community areas so they can have access to better food.
That's beautiful. I would love to talk to her about that. That would be wonderful.
Yeah, totally. I can definitely make that connection.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, so that's currently where our focus is currently on the Lakota Food Project and also on Wild Awakening. And Wild Awakening, you can again go to the website for Wild Awakening, which is www.wildawakening.org, and find a little more about the project and kind of who's involved as far as the guides that are going to be working. They're all buddies of mine who I've worked with in Alaska and in other places, and all very highly trained. And the idea is that we're going to go hike the 100-mile wilderness up in Maine on the Appalachian Trail for 21 days with a group of 9 teenage boys and 3 guides. And, we'll rise to the morning sun with a Kundalini Yoga sadhana and a set. We'll prepare our food together, eating very high vibrational food the entire way. We'll not lack on that. We'll hike every day. We'll have time for reflection and journaling. We'll be doing some kind of therapeutical circles around the fire at night where we are asking thought-provoking questions and helping every child kind of work through their own drama, because in one way or the other, we all have a story. And then we'll also provide a big part of the day will be devoted to doing primitive skills like fire making, shelter building, water gathering, things like carving with knives, different little projects like this. And the idea is that, after 21 days, this group of teenage boys is going to go home with a toolkit, to carry them through high school or college or wherever they are. They'll have a developed yoga and meditation practice, which, it's almost like going to a teacher training. I'm telling you right now, it's going to be full power. And they'll also have a toolkit of how to cook healthy food, whether it's in a kitchen or if they're cooking over an open fire. They'll also have another option because they'll be equipped with a backpack and a bunch of gear. And hey, if they want to go backpacking for the weekend with some of their friends, they'll feel comfortable to do that. And probably their parents will too, because they've had this sort of expedition style experience. So it's sort of, to use a common term, it's sort of like an outward bound with a twist, with a little, with the healthy food. I mean, we're not eating Snickers bars out there, I'll tell you that much.
Or MREs.
We're gonna be drinking Warrior protein and having quinoa, and And then we're gonna send them home with, like I said, a toolkit full of yoga and meditation. That's gonna, we're creating the leaders here of our future, and that's I'm not going to devote my life to creating factory workers and to serve the man, because that's what's happening right now. I'm here to help create creative thinkers and help create leaders who are going to make a positive change on this earth, before further destruction happens. We need people who aren't scared to stand up.
And we have a responsibility for that, right? We have a responsibility not only for ourselves, but also for Mother Earth, for community. There's a responsibility in that for each of us.
100%.
Yes.
I'm living in a place called San Cristobal de las Casas in Mexico, and it's a nice little city surrounded by mountains. And I have the good fortune of living on the biggest mountain, which is really nice because I'm quite out of the city. And I was talking to this mechanic this morning, and he was saying how just 20 years ago, when he used to live through this city, he never wore shoes, that there were dirt paths everywhere, and that there was food growing. He never had to buy food because there was so much food growing. And now 20 years later, he's like, forget about it. I'm obsessed with buying shoes because I don't want to walk, and all this garbage. And you have to buy everything. There's people are putting up brick walls everywhere and isolating themselves rather than living in this communal family environment where we understand that truly one hand washes the other. Yeah. Truly, we should love ourselves just like we're loving our neighbor. This is the reality. And
when working together, and I would assume that when you're working with the kids, I'll use my own personal life experience. I came from a really big family, and when I say really big, I mean really big, right? So we were our own community, right? And so there's growing pains with that as well. But for us to do, say, a camping trip, there's a lot of us, or even just to make a meal. So I look back at that and go, we all had to work together to create that and make that happen.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? And so you're doing that when you're working with these kids, right? It's like it's not a competitive thing necessarily, maybe a little bit just because naturally, like, some kid wants to beat the other person up the hill or something, right? But the reality is in working together, you establish that sense of community. And,
absolutely.
Right. And so for me, that's a huge gift because it teaches us to break down those brick walls, right? Because we are all here together. And
so true.
And I think that's for me, that's one of the greatest teachings of my childhood was having to work that out together. And
I do an interesting thing, Margie. That's I like to take a group of 9 and I like to break them up into 3 groups of 3. Because, 9, doing things with 9 kids it can be challenging. But when you have a group of 3, you can go cook dinner with them, for example, and be very successful at it. And then the other group of 3 can go gather water and make sure that a group shelter, like a tarp, is set up in case it rains. And then, another group can go prepare the camp in a different way and dig a toilet, a latrine for the group to use, and take care of everyone's packs or something like this. And when you come together at dinner and you realize, wow, this one group made the fire, this other group cooked the dinner, this other group got the water. If one of the groups decided they weren't going to do one of the jobs, we wouldn't have dinner.
That's right.
And you really do learn to appreciate each other and appreciate, the 6 hands that you have on each group, versus, competition or even, trying to do things on your own or choosing to sit out from the group.
Yeah.
The kids in this kind of, especially in a wilderness experience, right? Because I would always tell them, guys, if we don't have a fire, which they never don't want to build a fire, but for example, if we don't have a fire, we're not gonna have warm food,
Yeah.
you know, or if we don't set up your tarp or your tent right and it rains, you're going to get wet.
Yeah.
You know, and I would leave it at that. And I tell you, I've had kids get wet before, you know, very wet. And they've woken up to me in the middle of Alaska. And they said, Mike, my sleeping bag's all wet. Can you get me a new one? I said, what? Look around you, man. We are in the wilderness, bro. You are going to have to try and dry out your sleeping bag all day. And if it does not dry, I'm sorry, man, but you are going to be sleeping in a wet sleeping bag tonight. Maybe tonight you'll listen to me and you'll tie those knots better. And that's all I'll say. And I kid you not, that night and from the next nights on, that kid will always tie his knots correct.
Yes. Do you also find like even when you split up those groups, because I had something pop in, and it also teaches them that it's not that the equal participation, right? And so it's not that one job is more important than the other. It is that no matter what role you decide to participate in your community, whether, and I'll use the Wild Awakening as an example, whether you're someone who can donate, that's participating. Whether you're someone who shares this with everyone that you know and let them know that's out there, that's participating. Whether you're creating the fire or getting the water, that's all participating.
Absolutely.
And so all of it's needed, right? So each piece is needed. It's not that one's more important than the other. And that's a sense of loss that I've felt in our community, right? It's you can't rely. That's where we can all come together. And you're fundamentally teaching that in a very practical, tangible way. But as I speak, I say that only because a reminder to everyone that we can all participate in some way. And
yes, thank you for saying that too. It's true, because this program, Wild Awakening, truly is a community project. I mean, sure, it's going to be a few of us that are bringing it out to the woods, but we need kids, we need sponsors, we need donors, we need people to help drive us, we need anyone that wants to donate food, things like this. All of this will only help this program to not only get off the ground, but also to flourish and allow for more opportunity, you know, for all of us to be involved in a bigger community project or more projects down the line.
That's right.
So yeah, any help and any support is big time appreciated.
Well, and then it's also teaching the kids to start working in community and strength.
Totally.
And that lends itself to future generations that will share and do the same thing.
Yeah.
And
you know, and you know, I rotate the jobs too. So you are the in the kitchen for 3 days. You know, then you're in the fireman for 3 days. Then you're the waterman for 3 days. So every child is cycled through, you know, unbiasedly cycled through this with different teammates, so they can have a chance to work with everyone, including different guides. And they truly do see that every job is important, like you said, and maybe they like some more than others. But if they don't, you know, they still.
But that's natural though too, right? You know, I worked for the Forest Service 2 summers when I was young, you know, 14, 15, and which was super cool. And it was really hard. There were days I'd come home really dirty, like really dirty, and instead I would be too tired to take a shower. I'd take my clothes off and jump in the pool, right? Like, but the strength gained in that and working together I can't share how important that is in creating future generations that are open, and whether they choose a job in some corporate place, they're still going to have to work with people and work together. And that is fundamentally like very important to our society and creating community, whether that's in an office or out in the wilderness, right? And so I feel that's a big foundation in what you're doing also, right?
Agreed.
Not only, and so my niece worked in the glacier this summer for 21 days, right?
Wow.
And so she was off, like no contact and everything, right? And she's very studious, by the way. And so this was a new thing for her, right? And
Yeah.
they have acreage. They're on the mountain. They have chickens and quail, and there's bear that come up to their house. And so she's
Wow.
familiar with these things, but she would rather be reading Harry Potter, right? And so so she did this, and we went camping after that. And she's putting up the tent. She's doing all these things, and I'm like, oh my gosh, there was a huge, like you would say, rite of passage for her, right? But this huge transformation in her in just 21 days, right? And,
absolutely.
And there were foods there she's a little bit picky eater, and guess what? They were picking berries and doing things, and guess what? She ate, like
exactly.
right. And so, the difference was she had a fonder appreciation of what's available to us, and
absolutely,
So,
I remember.
Go ahead. I was just thinking, what a beautiful thing this is for not just this program, but creating that community and giving back, and that you're really teaching people to be really strong heart warriors and taking that out into the world,
I like what you say. I like what you say, that she learned to appreciate things, and that's the truth. I mean, when a kid is taken out of their comfort zone and put in a challenging situation like the wilderness, at the end of a few weeks, they really, really do appreciate going back to a nice bed and having a hot shower. And I remember a lot of my teenage boys would say, oh God, when I go home, I'm going to treat my mom so well. She cooks for me all the time, and, she does so much for me and washes my clothes and
all the things that they take for granted only because it's done for them. Right. And
exactly. When we truly, it's not intentional. But I think that's just the idea of sort of this kind of teenage years. It's a great opportunity to let your kid experience in a safe space, because that's what's being created with Wild Awakening, is a safe space for kids to go experience what it's like to take care of themselves. What it's like to be, to take care of to work together to take care of a group. What is it like to be stripped of 21st century comforts, and then when they go back, they say, wow, maybe I should pitch in a little bit more at home. Maybe I'll give some gratitude because, my mom, wow, she lets me use her iPhone like on the weekends. That's pretty cool.
Or she gets up and has breakfast made for me, right?
Absolutely, exactly.
There's so many lessons in that and so many gifts that
totally.
I'm really honored and grateful for what you do, and you taking the time to chat with me. I'll look forward to. We'll have to do it again because this was fabulous.
Absolutely.
So it's wildawakening.org. And his email and address and everything is on the Basmati site. And so anyone who wants to get in contact him or on wildawakening.org, please do so. In any way that you want to help with this community and be a part of it, it would be an honor. So anyway, thank you, Michael, so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you for everyone that's listening. Thank you, Margie. Thank you, Basmati. It's truly a blessing to share.
Okay. You have a beautiful day and enjoy the mountain.
Thank you. Adios. Right. Take care.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.